Well, to quote the Joker from one of the Batman movies, this town needs an enema. And the mayor in one Mississippi town is willing to pay for it. I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle now. And Bill, there's a mayor in Mississippi, in Clarksdale, Mississippi to be specific, Mayor Chuck Espy, who says that he is willing to pay criminals and drug dealers and the like to get out of town and give them a little seed money on their way so that they can get a new start in life.
It's the last drain to Clarksville. Is that what it is?
Exactly.
Thank you. I just had to get that in there. I couldn't resist.
So he is willing to give them $10,000 cash to get out of his town. So just on the surface of it, without knowing anything else about it, how does that idea sound to you? Oh, by the way, I'm sorry. Let me throw this in. $10,000 out of his own pocket. Well,
that at least mitigates this somewhat. Some questions are so easy that you almost think there's got to be something I'm missing here. But I guess I'm not. So let me ask you a question. If you were a drug dealer, criminal, or some other malcontent, and you knew that they would pay you $10,000 to leave Clarksville, where would you go?
To the next town over, I suppose.
I imagine you'd go to Clarksville.
Oh, you're saying the other people who have not yet been paid their $10,000 will go to Clarksville so that they can be asked to leave.
Every single felon outside of the city limits of Clarksville will come for their check. How, like I said, sometimes it seems so obvious that it just you just think that no, I can't possibly. There's something missing. But I suspect that this is in fact real. That the guy, and look, to his credit, if he's using his own funds, he's going to run out of his own funds pretty quickly. But seriously, I don't understand what it is about people who cannot see something that is that profoundly obvious on its face. Now, if you were to pay all of the American Legionnaires, let's say, $10,000 to leave Clarksville, I think the Legionnaires that were in Clarksville would leave Clarksville, and I don't think any Legionnaires would be coming in to swoop down on Clarksville. Not many, anyway, because it's just a different kind of person. But he sounds like he's basically counting on the goodwill of drug addicts and felons.
Well, let me be more specific about this because, and in case I said it wrong at the top of the show, the town's name is Clarksdale. I may have said Clarksville. I apologize for that.
Apologies to Clarksdale.
I think the song reference still works though because it'll rhyme. It'll work within the beat. There's part of an overall, the mayor has a 5-point plan actually, and there's a no tolerance policy. There's an effort to preserve life in case of interactions with police. There's rehabilitation and intervention programs. So this is part of it. And the number of homicides in the city of Clarksdale has dropped from 12 in 2018 to just 1 so far this year. Now, I don't know if you can directly attribute that to this kind of incentive, but the first thing that occurred to me, Bill, was let's say there is a drug dealer or a criminal in Clarksdale. You give him $10,000. He moves one town over and runs through his $10,000 and then resumes his old ways. I think the mayor is assuming the reason why the guy's committing crimes is he doesn't have enough money.
This is precisely correct. And this is why the whole thing seems like almost like a party joke to me. Look, it sounds to me that this is very well intentioned, that it's coming from a good place. So my respectful advice to the mayor would simply be this: as a person who basically studies human nature for a living, I'm not a professional, but I play one on TV. I would advise him to think very carefully about this. He has 2 different problems that he's lumped together into one problem, but they're not one problem. They're 2 different problems. The problem is crime, but the solution is twofold. You have felons and you have drug addicts. Many drug addicts are felons and so on, but basically you've got people who are stealing because they have to have their drug fix, and you've got people who are stealing because they just think stealing is swell. And if it were me, I would use his extreme benevolence on this, benevolence, just his just absolute generosity. What I would do with that money is, rather than paying $50,000 to ship 5 criminals to the next city, waiting for the rush of other criminals coming in to get their checks, I'd spend $50,000 on a superb halfway house where professional counselors and medical personnel can help people who are in the throes of addiction. The percentage of people that go through that and stay clean is not great, but it's not zero either. And I'd spend the rest of the money on the police force and make it clear that if you're one of these people who likes to steal things, you're not going to be dealt with very, very well here in Clarksdale.
Well, Bill, that first part of your plan is actually something I'm a little bit familiar with. Years and years ago, I used to spend one day a week in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and Williamsport had quite a thriving industry of not-for-profit organizations and other rehab centers that were designed to get people off of drugs. And there was a big stink in the business community one week or month when the Williamsport Sun-Gazette ran a headline story that said, "Williamsport, Mecca for Addicts." And if you create that kind of an infrastructure in Clarksdale, aren't you just inviting, like you said before, more people to come there who need that?
Scott, let's say that you live 100 miles from Clarksdale, and you find out, and let's say you're a drug addict, and you find one of two. You find out both things are the case. You find out that there's a treatment center in Clarksdale 100 miles away, and also if you go to Clarksdale and do some nasty things and then leave, they'll pay you $10,000. Which one do you think is going to get people to drive 100 miles? Which one of these things do you think is going to more motivate people? Drug addicts have to steal something. I forget what the numbers, but it's something on the order of $400 a day in order to maintain their $50, $60 a day habit. And if you're going to be dealing with drug offenders, you also have to have the wisdom and the experienced personnel to understand that while chemical detoxification programs can be effective, while group therapy, 12 steps, all of this can be effective, but in order for it to be effective, they have to want to stop being drug addicts. I mean, it's really what it comes down to.
Well, that's not necessarily the case, though. I mean, you're right. In order for it to be effective, they have to want to stop. But the way that people wind up in places like that have great rehabilitation facilities, or at least a strong infrastructure there, is not necessarily because they woke up one day and heard that Williamsport was a great place to get into drug rehab. It's because someone told them to go there. And that's because of the involvement of the state and the federal government in dealing with people who are on the fringes of society or who caught an addiction. And so the states and federal governments are actually recommending to people or sending people to these communities that have the facilities for this. So the guy himself who is using the drugs doesn't necessarily wake up one morning and say, I better go to Williamsport, but his counselor may have said, you better get to Williamsport.
If it were up to me to solve the problem of Clarksdale, and I had a little bit of money, I would take a look at. First of all, I would implement, medical care for people who are under the throes of opiates or whatever, and who simply have to be walked out of that addiction. But once that was done, I would do the only thing that shows a really pretty reasonable success rate, and that is, I would have each one of these offenders sponsored by somebody in Clarksdale who either used to be on drugs or was an alcoholic, and I mean personally sponsored by them. And if you do that, if you have a personal connection between the addict and the sponsor, and the sponsor has to have been through it, otherwise it just doesn't work. If you have that connection, that is the best chance that you've got to not only break the addiction, but also to certainly rein in a lot of the behavior. But ultimately, as they say in the trade, you have to hit bottom, which means that life has to hurt so much. Life is hurting anyway, so you're taking drugs to kill the pain. But basically, for any kind of recovery to take place, life has to hurt so much more than that you're now ready to quit the drugs in order to get out of this pain. And the odds are not great, but I've seen scores and scores of cases where they've actually happened, and these are actual miracles of people restored not only to their lives, but restored to far better lives than they ever had because of the personal touch, the personal interaction. So what's so interesting about this story to me is you've got a mayor with again, I haven't met him or anything, but seems to have a mayor with a heart of gold, really. He's using his own money. He wants to clean up his own town. It's not like he's trying to clean up Atlanta and he wants to get all the votes, So you got a guy with good intentions. Apparently you have a little bit of money in somebody's pocket. And it doesn't sound to me like you have the kind of toxicity that you would get in any other major American city, so that this thing is almost too big to tackle. The perfect solution for Clarksdale would be for Clarksdale to recover those of its children who have fallen into drug abuse through whatever circumstances or weaknesses or failed parenting or whatever the case may be. Try to reclaim them and bring them back home. And people who are felons because they want to be felons, lock them up, get them arrested quickly, and make sure that the punishment is immediate and consistent. And if you do that, I imagine you're going to have a very nice town.
Well, and it's really three groups of people that the mayor is speaking to. And we focus really on the one, which is the ones who sort of need help. And he would group those under a category that they're just called criminals. But the three focuses are drug dealers, who by and large are not heavy drug users. They're business people, gang members, and those criminals. Okay. And in many cases, like you said, because of the expense of maintaining a drug habit, you get into criminal activity because you can't generate enough money any other way to do that. He's saying basically about these people, including gang members and drug dealers, they may be in the wrong environment. They might just not have the good opportunities they need in this city. If you're a mayor of neighboring cities, how do you feel about this guy?
Well, needless to say, I would be a little concerned about it, but I'm not so much worried about the mayor of neighboring cities right now, because the case that you presented here is a very interesting case and an important case where somebody's trying to solve a problem in a relatively small town. And if he wants to divide it up into three groups, then that's fine with me. But what you can do if you want to divide that up into three groups, you can assign each one of those groups a level of culpability and a level of choice. Volition. People who are stealing to feed a drug habit are helpless. It doesn't mean they're correct, and it doesn't mean it's right, and it doesn't mean you have to feel all the sympathy for them, but they are powerless to act over this. They are driven to it by forces that are greater than family, greater than friendship, greater than marriages, greater than anything. Those people are drug addicts, and there's a path for treatment of drug addicts, and so that's the case that we talked about a minute ago. I would say above that are gang members who are not chemically addicted or perhaps so miserable that they're forced into chemical addiction, who have a lot of missing elements in their lives, usually missing father figures. This is the epidemic in America, frankly. If you put fathers back into the world, these problems would go away. So they are not as helpless as drug addicts are, but there are also social concerns that are forcing them into gangs, and that's something that could be probably dealt with best by, again, trying to provide what it is that a gang provides to young men, which is leadership, discipline, a cause, rules, society, brotherhood, all of these things. Frankly, to be perfectly honest with you, I would give them an incentive. I'd pay them $10,000 to go into the military, assuming that they weren't psychopaths and that they because so much of what they need is available through that, or put them into a football program with a good, strong coach. And then the top level of people that you mentioned are drug dealers, who, if they're successful drug dealers, do not become drug addicts. Never get high on your own supply, man. I think I learned that from, what was that course I took in Shaft. That's it. Those people are cold-blooded criminals who watch children die to make money. I'm not saying that that there are plenty of other opportunities for them, but they belong in a category separate from the gang members, which belong in a category separate from the drug addicts. They are career criminals, and they need to be locked up. You don't shunt those people over to the next city or the next county. you put a little bit of money into your police force, you get convictions, and you put them in jail. And you make it clear by doing that rather than saying, hey, come to Clarksdale, if you're a criminal or drug dealer or other misfit, come on down to Clarksdale, commit some minor infractions, we'll pay you $10,000 to leave. What he wants is, I think what he wants is, what I believe is best for his city is, he wants Clarksdale to be known as three things. As a place where if you are under the throes of drug addiction, you have a chance to receive personal one-on-one care to help you with that. That's no guarantee, but you get some of them. I'd start social programs in the school. Listen to me, the big conservative talking about social programs, I'm not a conservative because I have these ideas. I just like what works. And these midnight basketball things, as an example, have been shown to be very effective. That's what these young men need. They need grown men leadership positions. I do that for that segment. And then I would make it crystal clear that if I'm a felon, just a career felon, a thief, arsonist, whatever, a burglar, if I go to Clarksdale, their superb police force is going to get me arrested, and they are going to send every single one of these cases to the state to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law. And if you did those three things, I think this guy would have himself a hell of a town. And from the skimming the surface of this story, it sounds like he deserves it.
Well, examining experiments to facilitate the pursuit of happiness 5 times a week, Bill Whittle now brings you the breaking news of the day, analyzed from a conservative perspective. It's made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com who've gone there and signed up, and they actually pay either monthly or annually for the honor of producing this material. But they also get a side benefit, and that is, call it a conservative enclave for mutual encouragement, a place where you can go without the garbage rancor of social media to discuss ideas, to use reasoned thought and civil dialogue, to learn and to grow and to have a lot of fun and a lot of laughs. These are the members who have made this show possible. We're grateful to them. So for Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible.
By the way, conservative enclave for...
mutual encouragement.
Mutual encouragement. You could just pronounce that as see me. So just, see me. We'll get you straightened out.
See you soon.